All right, let's check YouTube.
But at any point, if it's like disturbing, you know, I'll turn it off. It was so hot.
Gotcha. All right. So while creating this podcast, Cut It's a Wrap, it was important for us to target or reach filmmakers and artists who have a passion and a love for Black culture, Black film, and to share their platform. And when I first talked to Kyla, she was like a burst of energy, and I learned so much about her, from relationships, from her traveling from school to on the West Coast and coming from the East Coast, and like her love for sci-fi and like just all genres. And then her web series, The Black Banshee. Did I say that right?
Black Banshee. The
Black Banshee. And your other web series was Finding the Way.
So the web series is Finding Our Way. The Black Banshee is a short film that is a proof of concept for a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I was binge watching those at work. I was like, oh,
very cool,
nice, and it's addictive because it just makes you want to click to the next one. So kudos to you. Yeah. So before we get started, we wanted to know tell us about your journey. How'd you come from, I don't know, to get to doing now when you're doing Melanin Magic and production and everything else? Like, tell us about your journey. We want to know your story.
That's a good question. I mean, we go all the way back. Let's see. I started off as oh my God, you guys, funny side note, my AC is doing this echo thing where it turns on and turns off. So it may just crank up again out of nowhere. Just
I thought she got the starter package.
Apparently it has its own body.
Time off of AC. It's too hot for your AC not to be working.
Right. It like auto does this echo thing, saving the environment. So we're gonna turn on and off when we want to. And it's like, I didn't ask for that, robot.
So
I don't know.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's nothing like Atlanta heat though. I don't think New York heat is anything like Atlanta heat.
I mean, it's super, super humid. So it's like, that wet. I don't know if Atlanta is like the wet kind of heat, but that's what New York is it's wet. It's gross. But
that's DC.
yeah, it is DC. Oh my God, yes. It is, and it's also Chicago and Florida and but as far as my journey goes, so I started off as a competitive cheerleader and I was a dancer and I just loved everything about the stage and performing, and that somehow went into me writing music. The first song I ever wrote was called Lovers and Haters because why not? 7th grade.
Okay. All right, Issa. Right. You had a little group too. Did you guys have a group and a singing group?
Right. It was just me in my room with like my play toy cars and Barbie dream house, just being like lovers and haters. Like, so ridiculous. But yeah, so I started off.
Wait, tried to go again. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
You had a whole dance routine and everything.
I did. It was so ridiculous because it didn't make it like the songs didn't fit on a bar together. So it was literally like lovers and haters. You say one thing, they say one thing to your face and turn around and say something else. Lovers and haters. Lovers and haters. I still remember me just in my room. I was like, wow.
Heart out.
Oh, were you the only child?
I wasn't, but I was the oldest, and at the time, the oldest on my mom's side at least. And at the time, I was like maybe, 8 or 9 or whatever. So my sister couldn't be any older than like 3. So she was somewhere else doing whatever toddlers did. So me in my room doing whatever, right? Who cares about the toddler? But yeah. So it turned into me singing music, and then I turned into dance. And when I was in 6th grade, I did a skit where I had to be a terrible singer, and I knew that I was a great one, so it would be fun playing a terrible one. And well, at least I thought I was a great one. And so,
haters.
Right. And, so I got on stage, and everybody laughed. Everybody thought it was so funny. I was like this church, because I went to Christian school. I was like this church girl in a choir who wanted the lead part. And I got up and it was bad. And everybody thought it was hilarious. And I was like, oh my God, I'm funny. And like, so I just like ran with that. And that started, like, I took my first acting class. I think I didn't take my first acting class actually until I was a sophomore in high school, but I was still doing dance and I was writing music. I thought I wanted to be a musician for a long time. And it kind of just spiraled from there. And then my junior year of high school, I was in a business program. And so my first entertainment company called Star Entertainment was created then. And it was like for Black teenagers to be in teenager movies, because I didn't really see us in any at the time. And I actually made like honorable mention in a couple business competitions, but I never like won because funding a production company was seen as being so expensive. So it was easier to fund like someone's like lemonade or pop or whatever, or soda, whatever the kids say these days. And so from there, I knew that I loved it. And so I was like, okay, you have to be in LA, because in Chicago it was theater, and I had done theater and done musical theater for years at this point. So my senior year of high school, I did a program that involved me spending half the day at school and half the day doing theater at Gallery 37 Center for the Arts. And so I did that. And then after school, I did musical theater, which was the first time I got paid to act. So I was like doing all that before I even left Chicago. And I was like, okay, I want to move on from theater. I want to go in the movies. So that's when I like moved to USC, got a rude awakening about how Black women and just Black people are treated in the business. And even like at USC, so every other semester they'd have a Black show, but only so many of us would be cast in like their other main stage shows. There would be like maybe one token Black person in the show. So it's very parallel to Hollywood. And I remember thinking USC is very parallel to Hollywood. So I did that. My senior year, I got into my senior showcase, which involved me performing in New York and LA for different agents and managers. And I got a couple calls for like Disney's voiceover department. And so I went to their like very fancy facility and did all these other things, but I got more responses in New York. And auditioning in LA the year I was there after I graduated. I also studied in London. I did a conservatory out there, whole thing. And
in London.
Yeah.
I was like, don't just brush past London. By the way, I was in London. No. Park it right here, because we're going to, tell us about London.
So
I agree, Antonia.
This Black girl is in London. Oh, I was also in London. No, let's talk about that.
So yeah, I knew
I've never been to London. Amanda, have you been to London?
I have never, and I would like to hear more about that.
I was just talking about London with one of my friends. She's living over there with her boyfriend. And anyway, so I wanted to study abroad, and at that. I was in college. I was about to be like telling my age, like I'm so old. I was in college from 2011 to 2015. But London was 7 years ago, which is crazy. But in 2013, this was like right after Scandal started, so there still weren't a lot of Black women in lead parts. And so at the time. When you think about American cinema, even when you think of white people, right? Most of our favorites, your Kate Winslets, or even your newbies, like your Margot Robbies or your Nicole Kidmans or your whoever, right? A lot of them are British and Australian and from New Zealand, all these different places. And in my head at the time, which now I know is not true, but at the time I was like, well, some of it's true. But at the time I was like, studying in London, would be better because they take actors more seriously over there, and their training programs are like more serious, right? And there is some truth to that. When I lived in London, so when I would tell people I was an actor, so many people were like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, you guys have to memorize so many lines, and you have to be so emotional, and this seems so hard, and oh my God. And I was like, this is so dope. You tell someone you're an actor in America, oh, why you want to do that? You got a backup? What else you gonna do? What you in it? And it's like, there's like, exactly. And there's,
because they appreciate the arts.
Exactly.
They're thespians.
Exactly. And some of them will call you that too. And like, so it's just like, there's so much more respect for it. There's also a limited point of view, because the three people who they brought up is, I want to be an actor. Oh, so like Oprah. How did we get to Oprah? Or they'll be like, oh, so like Fresh Prince. Wow, that was the 90s. Oh, so like Halle Berry. I'll take it. But it's so confusing. I'm like, those are the three Black people? Like, that's what you know? It was so funny, but they respect you so much more. I had a hard time for a long time telling people in America I was an actor. I remember I told somebody randomly one time in Chicago when I was there for a break, you know, like on a bus stop. I was like, oh yeah, I go to USC. And you know, USC is like prestigious school or whatever. They're like, cool, what are you studying? And I'm like, theater. And he's like, why would you do that? You need a backup plan. And I'm just like,
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Right. So, and there was a lot of like attacks like that, which is so funny, because when I was looking for a day job after I graduated from college, I was actually almost always in the front lines, especially when it came to teaching, when it came to office management positions, when it came to certain positions, because they were like, actors are so inviting and people like to meet them because they have such high energy. So I was oftentimes at the top of the list for a lot of jobs. So like, having a theater degree will not keep you out of the running for quite a few jobs, actually.
Yeah, and I also saw that actors make great lawyers too.
What? Wow. Yeah, I mean that tracks. Yeah, and there's so many like actors who make great psychologists and therapists, and a lot of actors double major in psychology, sociology, neurology, like, because like human interaction is like a part of everything we do, you know? And so it's actually, I think, can be a very valuable degree if you can use it in the right ways, regardless of if you actually go on to be an actor, you know? But I studied in London, which was super rigorous. Like, it was a hard program, but I loved it. And I think
were there a lot of Black people in your like cohort? How many? No.
Well, I'm still friends with to this day. I was literally just talking to her, Onyx, Celia, me. Were we the three? I think we were the three. And they used to get us mixed up. And Celia is Afro-Latina. She's friggin' like Panamanian and Dominican. She don't look like none of us. Onyx is like 5 shades darker than me. We don't look none alike. I'm tall. Neither one of them are tall. So it's just like, and they would get us mixed up. And that was commonplace, because that happened at USC too. One of my friends she's half Black, half white. She looks Native, like straight up Native American. And she's 5'2". I'm 5'8". She's like 5 shades darker than me. Sitting next to each other in class. They get us mixed up. And I'm like, how? There's nothing simple. Like her hair, like I told you, she looks like almost like Pocahontas, like a kind of Black Pocahontas, but Pocahontas, right? And so like her hair is like down here, and I'm like, how? Look at my hair. Look at her.
Like, do you see me?
No, that's the thing. A lot of people don't see me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're kind of programmed in this America to study what white people look like, because you go to the media, you go to everywhere you go. It's Caucasian persuasion.
Yeah, and even in go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And even in theater, you know, and that's been a big thing recently too, like Tennessee Williams and all of these like prolific white artists, right? But you don't learn about. My first play was Ruined by Lynn Nottage. That was the first thing I saw at the Geffen when I was 14, which that's a heavy play. But the point is
it called again?
It's called Ruined. And it's about the war that's happening in like the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a very it's like set in a brothel, but it was so beautifully done. And that was the first professional play I saw at the Geffen, which was like a huge Chicago theater. And I was in like learning about all these white people who I'd never heard of prior to going to USC. And I felt so out of place because all these white kids were so excited to read about their favorite theater person, you know, and they even kind of gloss over August Wilson, and he has a whole century cycle, and they just gloss over him too. It's really right, and it's really about whiteness, and even in London, it's, you know, obviously it's a heavy Shakespeare influence there, and I do feel like if you can conquer Shakespeare in that language, you can really conquer anything, and I'm grateful for that. That I had that kind of training, and there were so many like stage combat and like physical comedy and so many other things that I got from that program in London. But like even like one of the lead professors there, I remember I did a monologue for him and I fucking killed it. And he was like surprised, you know. So like there's a certain level, and I got to perform for Fiona Shaw, and I did a monologue for her, and she loves it.
The opera singer.
She's like this really prolific English actress. She plays in that cat and mouse show with the girl from Grey's Anatomy. What is it called? Y'all know what show I'm talking about. With the Villanelle is the lead girl's name. Eve.
Oh, Killing Eve.
Killing Eve. Yeah. Fiona Shaw is their boss on that show. And she's like a really prolific like English stage and film actress. Yeah. And yeah, so she like loves my piece or whatever. But yeah, a lot of, you know, even some of them were like, oh, you know, they don't have high expectations or really show any like real like care or interest in, you know, even there, I remember they cast like this white girl who everybody in the program knew was like this like one of the worst actresses in the program, and they cast her in this like lead part. And we were all like, even the other white people were like, you know, so that happens. It happened a lot, you know. And I will say I walked into BADA, British American Drama Academy, which is what it's called. And I walked into USC, you know, a worse actor than I walked out. You know, I walked out of those programs a lot better. So I can say that there's like a lot of value in the training I got, but it also does not consider my background at all. You know, I've had a professor at USC tell me that I taught too urban before, and I had to learn how to neutralize my accent. So like there are so many things, you know, that are said or done to you. And
how did you react to that? I'm just curious. Like what was your feelings, or like how did you respond?
I remember like that class in particular, I got to play like a range of roles, and you know, that's when I started to like really start to feel myself a little bit. But, you know, that professor, I always had a relatively good relationship with. I didn't have like a problem with him, and his work that he does outside of outside of being a professor, he's very heavy in voiceover. Like he does a lot of the dubs for those Netflix movies and that are like recorded in other languages. And he is on a lot of very popular anime shows, and so voice is like almost his specialty, right? And I remember that he told, oh, this weird echo is happening. But I remember that he told me, he was like, you can play anything from the 1800s to now. Like I firmly believe that you have such a range, da da da. And I remember he took like this pause, and he was like, and I could tell that he was like struggling to say it the politically correct way, you know? And I don't know if I had some kind of like, I don't know if it was in recognizing that I didn't go like, you know, F you, because I don't think he was trying to be vindictive. I think he was talking from a very business perspective of like, this is what they're going to do. if you don't do this thing. And I feel like you could do so much more if you do this thing. And that's like what I got for what he was trying to say. Because he was just like, he was like, the only problem is that I feel like
conformity. He wanted you to conform.
Right. He was like, I feel, and this is like almost exactly how he said it. He was like, I feel like your accent is a bit too urban. And that's like almost exactly how he said it. And I remember,
you know, when you're slow and saying something and your spirit is trying to push it out, that means you should reel it back.
Yeah.
And just don't say it.
It doesn't have to say it.
Yeah. And, you know, again, this is like 2012, 2013. The only Black woman in the lead on TV is Kerry Washington. And this is during a time where there weren't, and I still don't even think there's a crazy amount of quality Black women roles on TV or in movies, but this was a time when it was like nothing, you know, and the idea is like, if you keep talking urban like this, you're only going to play ghetto girl roles. And I think you can play anything from 1800s Victorian England till now. So basically neutralize your Blackness. And right after that, I went to study in London, and I ended up kind of neutralizing my accent. Now at first people like were just like, wow, your accent's so strong. They used to be so fascinated. And now it's like, you can't really place it, you know? And that's just kind of, except for when I'm upset.
It's a reflection. It's like we have to, like, we're just like what Amanda just said, we're able to kind of maneuver through their world and everything and put on your voice, you know, your telemarketer voice or whatever, and, you know, to be in their world. But can't I just be my Black motherfucking self? You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, that being a Black person, the voice that I have is not good enough for it.
Yeah, it's different dialects. I don't knock you on your it's different. Just because I'm talking this way doesn't mean I'm not educated.
Right. And I mean, how many white people do we watch in movies with accents where we're like, what are they saying? Like, Like, I don't know what's happening.
I ain't mentioning no names, but yeah.
Right. I'm just like, because I was about to get some examples.
Or the jokes that they tell. Some jokes I just don't get. That's
over your head.
That's the
over your head.
I'm sorry, I don't get that humor. I don't. First of all, I'm a little slow already. So when you do, I'll be like, oh. You say you quote about the 5 hobbies all day. I have a quote.
Listen,
you got
me
and my purple. I have a quote for
it.
Friday, I got a quote for it.
Me and my mama, we get into regular fights about what's better, 5 Heartbeats or Temptations, and the Temptations will always trump 5 Heartbeats to me. Like, I just don't understand. Like, you look like my mom right now. I'm always like, I mean, that's fine. I mean, the little girl is great. Whatever happened to her, by the way? The one from the beginning of the movie? Remember when she's like singing or whatever? Y'all remember the part I'm talking about? And I always wonder what happened to her.
You have to find her.
I know.
You sing that great song. And where you at?
And then where you go? But
some people run at the first sign storming.
But it's a great movie. But The Temptations has like a whole. I've seen The Temptations so many times and I never get tired. I think also 5 Heartbeats is great, but I love the Temptations. I'm turning this off. The cranking is bothering me. But yeah, so that was like, you know, USC and London. I will say, side note, I had my most active dating life in London. British men are here. American men are down there somewhere. It's just their style, their grace, the way that they carry themselves. Like, there's just an automatic like feeling of maturity that I feel like, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they are mature, but they can show fool you. But there's a quality like of care that they have for themselves that I feel like American men kind of lack a little bit. And obviously that's a sweeping generalization, but like because there are American men. But yeah, so many men there. And I love a man with style too. So you could literally have me at hello if you got good style. Like, hello.
But I like Boris.
Are they what?
Kind of like Boris, not Boris. What's that? Idris Elba.
Oh, are they like Boris Kujor? Idris Elba? Yes and no. Like I think Idris is like hot, but like he isn't someone who I like want to like. You know, but
like for people that can't hear you, what do you like?
But I think, but I get the point. They do have a swag like that though. Like they have an energy. Yeah, they dress really nice. There's an energy to them that's very like, and this is all racist too, because I'm an equal opportunity lover, and like the black one's there, the white one's there, the Latinos are there. Yes, and they all have that kind of just like, I'm British and I'm better than you, and I'm like, not me, but the other American men you are. Yes, you're right. And they love American women, so it's so easy to get a date. It's so easy. They love American.
Like international to them. Like they're international to us. They're foreign to us. We're foreign to them.
Right, exactly. So it's like an
exotic.
Exactly.
So and 50 Cent say, black woman, go somewhere. Go to Thailand, go to Bali, go to London. You can be exotic too.
Exactly. And that's the thing too. It's a double thing. They love
now, but
exactly. They love black women there too. That's the other thing. Like black women there stay pulling. Like no lie. Like I don't know how the struggle is for black men there, because you know you hear from certain black British actors and they have like their own qualms with the community, with the culture there. And I dated some black men out there who did too. But black women are loved out there, which is it's just so different, you know.
Amanda, turn your volume up just a little bit. I can't hear you barely.
Put it on now.
But trying to think. So I finished school, gave LA a year. All LA wants is biracial black girls, and I was usually the darkest person in the room, and that didn't make any sense to me. And I never went in for non-biracial parts, which was also didn't make sense to me. And because I'm not biracial. And so I don't like LA as a city. Everything's so spread out. You don't really get to see your friends. There's not a lot of quality people out there. So, and then the industry kind of sucked. And I did better at Showcase in New York anyway. In New York, I had loved it. I had a family member offering to let me stay with them for free. So I was just like, and I left. And in my first year in New York, I booked a show, a paid major like festival show in 3 weeks. I started my company within 6 months, and I had an agent within my first year. So, and none of that would happen for me in LA.
Wow.
At all. Yeah.
Is that where you started your like your sci-fi genre? How'd you get into like,
sci-fi? Yes. Oof, man. So I have loved sci-fi since in mythology and folklore and fantasy, because people will argue with you that some of that stuff isn't actually sci-fi, but since early Charm days, you know, and like I said, some people argue that.
And I didn't realize, hold on, because you know, my misconception is sci-fi was space and aliens, right? But then when I read a little bit more, I said, let me dive deeper into what sci-fi. And I'm like, I love sci-fi all my life then, because I used to watch Charmed. That was my show. Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
That was my shit.
Yeah, Angel, all that stuff. Yeah. So they're like subgenres of each other. Right? Because some people, like, if you're talking to like a sci-fi buff, they're going to be like, sci-fi is where you use science in some weird way, right? So all of your Marvel movies uses science to like back up all their claims, right? Like, this is sci-fi, you know, like very like science-y. Or Ex Machina, which is a big movie in 2014 with Oscar Isaac. That was like about like this robot becoming a person and people using science as technology. Black Mirror is very like sci-fi, like that is kind of stuff is like your very standard sci-fi, and then you have your mythos, right? So your mythology, which is like a subgenre of sci-fi. Sometimes the series may use science to explain how we got the mythology. Sometimes they don't. So that's your vampires or your witches or your werewolves, you know, your teen wolves, or your, like we say, your Charmed or Vampire Diaries or whatever, right? So there's like different and then you have your fantasy, right? So that's like that new show Cursed or Lord of the Rings. Stuff like that would be considered like fantasy.
Is that sci-fi?
That's sci-fi through and through, with all that, like, what is it called? The vibranium? That's full like sci-fi. But like Lord of the Rings or my personal favorite, and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, you know what I'm talking about. That's fantasy, right? Considered like sci-fi fantasy-ish, like a combination, because those things take places on lands far away or like out of universe, or what, not necessarily space, because space is still considered like sci-fi, but like they're in like these fantasy lands, right? And then time travel somewhere in between, because you're using science, but it's also kind of fantasy. So it's like they all kind of like overlap. So like Banshee, I used to call it, because I have another actual sci-fi pilot that takes place on a different planet called Igatu, which is like sci-fi through and through. And then when I was writing Banshee, I was talking to one of my friends who is a sci-fi writer, and she was like, well, this is more mythology horror thriller. And I was like, okay, mythology is just a subset of sci-fi. She was like, yeah, like some people will think that, but your sci-fi nerds are going to be like, this isn't sci-fi. So, excuse me. So yeah, it depends on like who you're having the conversation with. For me, I just say sci-fi mythology and sci-fi mythology fantasy or whatever. It's a lot of words, but like, just so people know, like, that I mean the all-encompassing like worlds, you know, the Buffys and like Charmed and all of those, Watchmen and the 100.
Watchmen is a good one.
Yeah.
Watchmen is on another level. I can't understand it.
Yes.
It takes
I saw it twice, and then the only part that I really was, maybe because I'm a romance at heart, when the guy and the girl, Regina King and her, they met up.
Yeah.
He was the one or whatever. I can't remember his name. The blue guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was the episode that I was like, oh, I was really into it. I was like, oh, what are they, you know, because other stuff,
it's based on do you know the comics?
It's light years away from me.
Yeah, I knew a lot about the comics, so it's really cool to like see who these characters are. Like, because think of like the TV show is almost like a follow-up to what happens in the comics, because the comics take place in like the 80s and 90s. And why is everyone texting me right now? I don't know if y'all hear that ding or not, but the comics take place in the 80s and 90s, and so this is kind of, I think it's 80s and 90s or the 70s or something like that. And so this is like kind of after the events of the comics, or if you've ever seen the movie, it's like after the events of the movie. And so like the older white woman is like the ex-girlfriend of the blue guy, and the older white man and the blue guy were like, they had different ideas on how to like solve the world's problems like 20 years prior, and so like, yeah, it's almost like a sequel to what happens, and that's what it was supposed to be. Like, that's what the creator said it was supposed to be. So what happened?
Do my research.
Yeah. So. And like my family are like comic book nerds. So I went in like pretty familiar with who, I had to read about some of the characters a little bit more, but like pretty familiar with like who the characters were. I didn't know that he was gonna be, what is this character's name? I hate calling him the blue guy. Dr. Manhattan, there you go. I didn't know he was Dr. Manhattan, but I knew that character was gonna be important because Yahya was playing him. And like Yahya isn't like some unknown actor. I'm sorry, it's not Yahya, it's Yahya. He's not some unknown actor. So when I saw him just being a husband, I was like, that don't seem right.
Yeah, I was like, why is he the side piece in this?
Right, and he was that for like 4 or 5 episodes, and I'm like, when is Yahya gonna be like? When is he gonna be important?
I thought he was just her husband. I didn't even think of that. But I was like, well, he got good eye candy. I was like, that's nice. You know?
And that was the part where I was like, the artist in me, like knowing who this actor is, I'm like, there's no way they would cast this part. Because they would have just gotten an unknown if he was just gonna be her husband. And so when they got him, I was just like, he was just the main villain in Aquaman, and he was just on that 80s show on Netflix, and he's been in mad movies. Like, everyone knows who he. I think at that time too, his casting had already been announced for Candyman. I'm like, Yahya isn't some like random actor. Like, this is weird. So, but they kept doing it for like 4 or 5 episodes. So I'm like, what is it gonna happen? Who is he? I was like, is he gonna die? And it's gonna be very important. Like, what's gonna happen? And then he like was obviously Dr. Manhattan, and I was like, that makes so much sense because you would have just cast like a random if he wasn't important. So I was like,
that's a good choice.
Then she killed him. I was like,
yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying you talked about your family being like comic book into that nerdy, you know, sci-fi. So they introduced you to that world. I'm curious, or was it something that, like, how did you get that introduced?
Man, that's a really great question because I'm like, oh, I thought I just fell in love with it, but now I'm thinking back, I'm like, oh wait, I think it was my family.
It's in your blood.
Yeah. Man, it's like literally one of my uncles is like writing a sci-fi novel. So I'm like, oh wait, I guess it is the people I'm related to. Yeah, I mean, my family's like like I said, big comic book, big superhero nerds. Like my mom, I think she had a hand in naming my brother. His name is Jarrell. This is going to sound really random to y'all, but Jarrell is the father of Kyla. Do you know who Kyla is?
Who's Kyla?
Kyla is Superman. That is his real name. And Jarrell,
wait, say that again. I'm tripping out.
And so Jarrell is his father. And my uncle was named. I'm like, y'all are such nerds. Who does it? Like, what?
Too deep. They are
right. Exactly. And so another one of my cousins, his name is Xavier. Whose name is Xavier, you may ask?
X-Men.
On a quiz.
Professor X.
Guess what his nickname is? His nickname is X-Man. That's literally what we call him.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah. So that is what my family does.
Are you partially named after Kyle as well?
No. Hold on. I'm trying to make sure I'm pronouncing that right too. I don't want no fans to be like, that's not even how you say it.
You know,
right?
My brother is into sci-fi. He is a fanatic, and he hated the X-Men, the last X-Men.
Can y'all see that? You can't see nothing, can you?
You gotta bring your phone down a little bit.
I see the pictures.
This is so hard.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can you see what it says?
Did he take a picture?
I can't see what it says. What it says?
No, I can't see
what
it says.
It's so weird. I don't know if it's the camera. There it is.
Okay.
Okay.
It's spelled K-A-I.
Kyle.
Kyle.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle.
Superman real let's see, father real name. So yeah, but anyway, so that is that. Yeah, his real name is Jor-El, and my uncle's name is Jarrell. You can't see it, but it says Jor-El here. And my uncle's name is Jarrell. Like literally just,
I like that.
But I'm named after 2 soap opera characters. So there's also that.
Okay.
When are they named? That sounds like.
So
wasn't Tiffany named after a soap opera character?
I know.
My middle name is Paige. I don't want to say Knots Landing. It's the girl who played Edie on Desperate Housewives. She used to play on one of those soap operas, and her name was Paige. And my mom loved her. So that's where Paige comes from. Kayla is from One Life to Live, I think. There's a famous super couple on One Life to Live. I think it's One Life to Live. And their names are Bo and Kayla. And she just named me after
Bo. Why do I remember Bo?
Because we used to watch One Life to Live all the time.
Yeah.
I remember Lady's name though.
So that's where my names come from.
They had like a witches episode on One Life to Live too.
Really?
The fantasy world in One Life to Live.
That's so funny.
That's why your mom liked it.
Right? But yeah, I mean, so they introduced, so obviously we saw X-Men at the movie theaters, and my mom was very upset about how they wrote Rogue, because Rogue was her favorite character growing up, and I didn't understand that because I just didn't know why she didn't like Storm, because Storm was the only black one. I was very confused on why she was like obsessed with Rogue. And so, yeah, I mean, now that I think about it, I guess it kind of was my family, because even Charmed, like, that was something me and my family like swore by and watched every week together. And I wanted to be Piper, and my mom wanted to be Prue, and like, yeah, and like Buffy, the same thing. And so I guess it was them, huh? Who like put me on to like these shows. Yeah. So I spent my just kind of childhood growing up watching these shows like Star Wars and Star Trek and Lord of the Rings and all of I don't know why I keep calling it The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because that's one of the names of one of the movies. What is that movie called?
Chronicles of Narnia.
Chronicles of Narnia. All those we saw in the movie theater, and so my family has been like big like fantasy, sci-fi. You know, they have strong feelings about the remakes, like the Star Trek remakes, and they just have strong feelings. Like my mom would never watch the CW remake of Charmed. She's just like, it's automatically terrible because it's not the original.
There's a remake.
So yeah.
What about Sabrina the Teenage Witch? You remember that one?
Yeah, we not watching that either. Yeah.
Oh,
I watched Sabrina growing up too. Oh my god, I watched Sabrina growing up too.
I heard the other one is totally different from the original.
It's totally different because the original was like quirky and fun and kind of funny, and this one is very, very dark, very, very dark. So they're two completely different shows. And I tried to watch this first one, and you know, I watch a lot of dark shows. That doesn't really bother me, but this was the first show. Like, I deal with a lot of shows that kind of try to balance darkness and light, but this was the first show where like the characters are openly like worshiping the devil. I think at one point somebody even says that, and I was like, I don't know about that.
You go all the way in.
I draw the line.
Right. It's just like, I mean, because you know, you're in these sci-fi worlds, and some of these shows are angels and demons. And I even watched the show Lucifer, which is actually, even though it's called Lucifer, it's a show about a man with daddy issues, and it's pretty good. Because when you think about the story of Lucifer in the Bible, you're like, Lucifer does have daddy issues. This tracks, you know? And so when you're watching it, you're like, this is like so nuanced, you know? And it's actually pretty well done. But also on Lucifer, Lucifer, he the devil. He don't even like himself. So
I never saw it because the name just gives me pause.
Yeah, but
you know, when I see the commercial, he seems like they're supposed to be kind of funny or lighthearted, maybe.
It's definitely way lighter than that Sabrina remake. And it's really kind of about this guy who really was banished to hell, and you know, obviously they fill in some of the dots on why he was banished to hell, and he battles being the devil and like what his duties are, and how he doesn't really want to be that guy anymore, but he also keeps cutting off his wings, and he's like doing it because he's still like this rebellious teenager who's just like, I don't want to do what daddy says. Like, it's like this whole thing. It's actually really, really nuanced, and that actor is it Tom Ellis? I can't remember, but he's really great in that part, and I was a little hesitant at first too, but they just do a good job kind of making him like a complex character, and God is kind of like this hovering presence that we never actually see. even making God like this really kind of interesting figure. And it doesn't necessarily villainize him too. It just kind of makes him a dad. And him and Lucifer have this kind of, complicated relationship. And I thought they could have did that really poorly, and could have made this a thing where, they do kind of make God an absentee dad a little bit. But more so for Lucifer than for his brother, who's his
brother?
The guy actually from The Temptations, the one who played Melvin, the dark skinned one.
Oh, wait. Melvin. Blue? Was he blue or no?
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna give you his name.
The tall guy, the
DB Woodside.
Blue.
Yeah,
with the really deep baritone voice.
Yeah, with the baritone voice.
What's his name again?
On the DB Woodside, he plays the angel Amenadel. And they have like Michael come down at one point. I think they do. That's another like kind of fantasy sci-fi series that I think they do a really good job on.
What would Jordan Peele be considered? Is like a thriller or a sci-fi?
His stuff is mostly okay. At first, I thought I was tripping. I was like, "What's his name?" Not Melvin in the movie, but it was Melvin. But they did.
I just remember Blue.
The mom called him Melvin.
The mom called him Melvin.
I was like,
"That's your favorite movie from No Temptations."
No, they did call him Blue, but for whatever reason, I remember him as Melvin, and I'm like, "Was his name not Melvin?" I'm tripping.
It was Melvin. Come on in here and zipping up that jacket.
I also haven't seen Temptation in like 7 years. But repeat the question one more time.
Jordan Peele, will he be like considered sci-fi or like thriller?
It depends on kind of what show you're talking about. Because if you're talking about like Twilight Zone, that's very like kind of sci-fi-y. In Lovecraft Country is very sci-fi. But if you're talking about, Get Out could kind of, it's like experimental sci-fi, but it's mostly a horror movie. It's mostly like a horror thriller. The big reveal is very scientific, but the actual movie itself is
What about the other one that he did with the scissors? Us, yeah.
Yeah, because that's kind of alternate reality kind of thing, right? So that like falls into that sci-fi horror thing, and that's kind of what he does. He does mostly like horror sci-fi. Like he has a movie with Issa coming out that's horror sci-fi, and he has done Twilight Zone and stuff. So he kind of treads that line between horror and sci-fi, or really kind of blending those two things together. And I think he's pretty brilliant, actually. I really respect him as a creator, like a lot. Yeah, I think he's cool.
Anybody that you kind of not model, but focus or you glean from for ideas or motivation or inspiration?
I take from not necessarily like genre creators, there are some who I really like, and it's hard because I could say there are some I respect, but then some of those people have had trouble in the past with like Black people, right? So like Jason Rothenberg, like I just finished watching The 100, and is one of The 100 is a very complex sci-fi series that I love, but Jason has had problems with his Black characters in the past, and like Black actors have left his show because of it. Same thing with Christopher Nolan. I love Inception and I love Memento and I love the Nolan brothers in general and Westworld and all the work that they do. And they've had issues with Black creators, and so, it can be very hard. I also deeply respect Britt Marling. I think she's one of the most fascinating people out. Like the OA is like one of the most fascinating sci-fi series I've ever seen. And she did something like really just like deeply interesting with that show. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. You may absolutely hate it. It's a very confusing show, but it's a show that's told over like two seasons. So you have to kind of watch both to kind of get what's happening.
Episode 1.
You still episode 1? Yeah, but she's so fascinating. Her interviews are so fascinating, and just the way that she cares about people of color and women, and how she uses sci-fi to tell like these kind of like take issues that and disable people too, because the show is about this blind girl who comes back and can suddenly see, you know, and how people take advantage of that, especially if you're two of those things, right? If you're disabled and a woman, or you're Black and a woman. And she just does like really fascinating things, I think, with that show. You know, so there's some really dope people. And then the creator of the show we were just talking about with Regina King, he also did Lost. You know, I think he also did Lost. And so, you know, people were concerned, you know, that they were like, please don't let it turn out like Lost. So, you know, there are people like that who I deeply admire. You look like you want to say something. And then there are people like Ava DuVernay who I deeply admire, who does like a lot of historical dramas. And like with my work, which is mostly a sci-fi mythology, and a subgenre would be thrillers and action, because my sci-fi mythology stuff usually has a lot of action and it usually has a thriller element. And I like to blend, like Black Banshee takes place in different time periods, right? And I used to be a history teacher, and so history constantly repeats itself, and especially in America, we haven't really learned how our history has affected our present, and people keep doing a lot of the same things. And I think Ava is just so fascinating in the way she pulls that into her work, and I think she's one of the greatest directors alive today, to be honest. And she's a Black woman, and even the work she's doing on Queen Sugar, and obviously with the Five, the Central Park Five, and Exonerated Five, and I deeply respect her. And I also deeply respect Issa. And, you know, me and Issa are two completely different genres. But I love how she's unafraid. She's like, I'm rooting for everybody Black, and that's on that. I love how because this is something I've always wanted to do too. I feel like there are so many Black actors who have just kind of not gotten their due. You know, like your Nia Longs and your Kyla Pratts, and just like there's so many like great ones, and she brings those people on Insecure, you know, and she puts them in parts and gives them work while also bringing in new people, and I love that. And they explore really great topics on that show, and like that's not necessarily the kind of genre I want to work in, but there's a deep respect there for what she is doing, you know. So yeah, there are people there's people in the genre that I love, and then there's also people outside of, you know, the genre that I really like. And if I had to choose between Jonathan and Chris Nolan, I would probably pick Jonathan. And part of that also has to do with, I just saw this panel that he was on. And Person of Interest is another one of my favorite shows as well.
Oh, wasn't Taraji in that for a little while?
And Jonathan, that was his thing. Yeah, Taraji.
They're the same people that did Once Upon a Time too, right?
No, that's what's their name? No.
I know it's a duo, but no.
Yeah, so that's like IMDb. Adam Horowitz, yeah, and Edward Kittis. So they're the ones who they were also a part of Lost. I'm trying to think if the guy what's the show we were just talking about? I just forgot.
Person of Interest?
Not Person of Interest. Watchmen.
Oh, Watchmen.
Because that's Damon Lindelof. Was he did The Leftovers? Okay, I don't think he was he a part of Lost? But Edward Kittis, who did Once Upon a Time, they were part of Lost, and yeah, Damon Lindelof created Lost. So yeah, I was not wrong. I'm like, let me make sure I'm getting my creators right, but I was right. But yeah, but the Nolan brothers, they did your Dark Knight, Dark Knight Rises, The Prestige, Inception, Memento, and The Prestige is one of my favorite movies. Actually, it is my favorite movie, and that's the Nolan brothers. And they did Tenet that's about to come out. So that's
with David. Was it John David Washington or
yeah, Denzel's son? Yeah,
yes, Denzel's son.
Yeah, he's so fine.
John David.
I used to watch him on Ballers. He was my boo on Ballers.
If you close your eyes, he sounds just like Denzel Washington.
Sound like his daddy.
He sounds just like him,
but he don't look like him, and that's all that matters to me.
Denzel was kind of cute.
people love Denzel. They love to see him walk away or whatever. But
walk in, walk away.
John is. I would take that son. And listen, the son's closer to my age anyway. Me and John can have some fun. Okay, he look a little short, but I'll make it work.
He walked tall though.
He do.
But you're tall. You're 5'8". I didn't even know you were 5'8". That's like
it's not short. Yeah. It's not. It's a weird conundrum too because I'm not supermodel tall, right? Like I'm not 5'11".
I mean, like top model, they were like, "Oh, she's so short."
Yeah, right. Like, I would probably be. I would be considered a short model, right? But I'm taller than many people, and I wear heels a lot too.
Even. Okay.
Wow. My mom is 5'2" and my grandmother is 5'1", and standing next to them is actually the funniest thing ever. Like they're so short. They're just like tiny humans. It's so cute. I'm like, oh yeah, it's so small. So cute.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm used to it though. I was like the tallest person in my house growing up, and like, yeah, I'm kind of used to it.
Okay. So we're naming all these wonderful men that does these sci-fi. Where is the black women in the sci-fi?
Well, I did name Britt Marling. Britt Marling. She's a white girl.
Okay.
But yeah. You said where the black
Where's
what?
the people of color? Like, are they there? Besides, okay, remember what's that guy? Okay, the Sixth Sense guy. With
M. Night Shaman.
Is that a person of color?
Yeah, he is. He is.
Okay,
he does not employ people of color, but he is one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But where are we? Where are we here in this genre? Are we here? Are we present?
That's a great question. Why now people are calling me? See You Yesterday just came out. I haven't seen it because it just looks depressing. It is. But it's the Netflix movie. And that's a black creator. I'm literally about to look up their name right now because I don't want to mess it up. I think that may have also been produced by Spike. Don't quote me on that. Frederica Braley and Steven Bristol. I know this person, and it was produced by Spike. Man, I be knowing my stuff. I'm proud of myself. But, but yeah. So they See You Yesterday. That was like a black creator, but I couldn't even name off top. Like even when I was like making my my pitch deck, it's not like I have. On my pitch deck for influences, I have Charmed, Teen Wolf, Watchmen, and what's the third show I have on here? I mean, the fourth show. I have it's not loaded, but yeah, there's another show that was not made by black people. So yeah, that's a big reason.
Is it because we're not watching it, or we're not into like?
Orphan Black. How did I forget Orphan Black? Oh my god, Orphan Black is like one of my favorite TV shows to exist. I don't think it's because we don't watch it. I don't think that's it, because obviously we do. Mm-hmm. I think and this has like been a wonder for a while, even amongst black people. I would love to hear y'all thoughts too, but I think that, white people have a very limited view of how they see black people. And, we are in these shows, like you think of my girl who's on Queen Sugar, who plays the darker skinned sister, she was in the vampire show.
Apocalypse show. That one that you always was watching, Amanda. Was she in that one?
True Blood. She was in True Blood.
Oh, True Blood.
She was in True Blood.
And then, you know, we're even on Orphan Black, like the main character is Sarah, and I don't know if y'all know what Orphan Black is about, but it's about this girl who figures out she's a clone. It's an insanely amazing show. And it has one of the best actresses like on TV.
Was it a new show that happened this year?
The show has gone off. It ran for 5 years. She won, I think, 2 Emmys. Tatiana Maslany. She played over 30 characters on the show. It's like incredible.
Yeah, they cut it off real quick. And the dude from Saved by the Bell was in that.
No,
the same thing.
No, that's a different show. That was another film, but that was about vampires and.
Yeah, that was another. I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I can't remember the name of it.
The Passage. And that had a black girl in it too, Sydney or something. I can't think of her first name. Oh, there's Fast Color. And that girl from The Passage was also on. Yeah, she was also in Fast Color. And but Fast Color was created by a white woman. She just happened to, I think she found Google first.
Typing. Does that mean?
Yeah, it does. It does sound like typing. It does. Has someone hacked it?
Shoot. Somebody's taking on a storm.
But even Fast Color, like that was
to this conversation.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna pick up on my Zencaster recording. Hopefully.
Hold on. There we go.
Oh, isn't technology wonderful?
It's amazing.
No idea where it's coming from. Okay, I think it's done. That is so weird.
This has been actually really nice, though. I like talking to y'all.
I know. And then you're all the way in New York, like. It's technology. That's what I'm saying. Technology is. I want to keep saying technology does what I want it to do. So if I want it to work, it would work.
You can't control me. I control you.
And then it's wonderful because we are able to see each other, and we're not even in the same area.
I know. Yeah. Well, now it stopped. If we want to resume, it sounds like it has stopped.
Okay. Yeah. So you were naming. Okay, so we were talking about The Passage, and we were also talking about Black Orphan, and those were young characters, young girls playing in those.
Hold on. Black Orphan. No. So the girl from The Passage was in this show. It was in this movie called Fast Color, which was about 3 generations of Black women who have superpowers.
That was a good
Google
one.
and Bataral was the lead in that. But that show wasn't created by a Black filmmaker. A white woman directed it. She just happened to find Google because Google's an amazing actress. And so obviously, since she cast Google, she had to cast a Black daughter and a Black mother. And that's how she ended up having a Black kind of cast. And they're turning that into a TV show. And they're adapting 2 versions. Yeah, and they're adapting 2 Octavia Butler novels. I think Ava's doing one and Viola Davis is doing one. Yeah. So
that's wonderful. So what I'm hearing you say is the white women are making a way for people of color.
No. Well, Fast Color was that, but the 2 Octavia Butler novels that are being adapted, one has been adapted by Ava DuVernay and one has been adapted by Viola Davis and her company. So, so they're, Black women. And so those are, it's Wild Seed and Dawn. I want to say Viola Davis is doing Wild Seed and Ava DuVernay is doing Dawn, but it could be reversed. I'm actually just finished reading Dawn. But yeah, so Black artists, there are sci-fi things like in pre-production, like in development. And obviously I'm right now packaging my show with the agents I'm working with. and talking to a lot of people. And when I get off with you guys, I'm probably going to work on my pitch after I cook. So like, there are people who are creating those series. How many of them end up going to series? Prayerfully, all of my shows do, and prayerfully, all of Ava's does, and Viola's does, because there's so much request for it. Because, you know, I'm watching a show right now called Warrior Nun, and there's an amazing Black woman character on there, and I'm just like, why doesn't she have her own show? And, you know, and I was talking about Orphan Black, which is a show about the clones. That is led by a white woman. That show was on for 5 years, and Tatiana has won multiple Emmys for it, and like was incredible. She played over 30 characters, and I never felt like I was watching the same actress, even though there would be 5 versions of her on my screen. It was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. But on that show, like one of her closest best friends and sidekick was a Black man, you know, and it's always kind of like that, you know, like we're either even in sci-fi, they just make us kind of, you know, sidekicks, you know, but they just had the movie come out with Charlize on Netflix with Kiki Lane that was directed by Gina. And okay. the old guard, and I loved it, you know, and it's obvious that they're trying to put Kiki in the lead if you've seen the movie and what happens. Although that'll be interesting because Charlize is such a heavyweight, but so there are people who are trying, but even with like Marvel, it's just like Captain Marvel. It was so funny. I was watching an honest trailer for Thor Ragnarok. Was it Thor Ragnarok or Captain Marvel? It was Captain Marvel, and it was like talking about the Black woman who played her best friend, and they were like, she joins the list of Marvel's Black best friends, and like Don Cheadle showed up, Anthony Mackie, Tessa Thompson, and like all the list of like Black best friends.
It's a whole trend. The best.
Yeah.
It's never a character development. Like even Storm, I get so mad because I'm like, Storm got so you read comic books. She has a story. She's a whole movie, but we don't know anything about her in none of the X-Men. But this crazy accent. You don't even know where she got the accent from unless you read the comics. Like where are you?
And that was so funny too, because they were talking about the girl who she's the Olsen twin sister. She plays Scarlet Witch in the Marvel movies. They were because she loses her accent over the course of the movies playing Scarlet Witch, and they were like, she's joined Halle Berry and losing her accent over the course of the movie. And I thought it was so funny because Halle Berry probably stopped using an accent because she like, y'all not directing me. What
You're like,
no lines.
She probably didn't even have any lines. You're right.
She's probably like, I'm gonna just stand here and put my arms out and pretend and just get my little check because y'all obviously don't want to direct me.
Exactly.
I wouldn't do my accent either. Nobody probably even know this. She's probably like, I mean, obviously the audience know this, but she was like, ain't nobody going to this set gonna know this because they don't care.
I'm still collecting my checks.
Right, and I love Halle. I think she's really, really wonderful. And, you know, obviously there's a debate on whether or not she should have won the Oscar for Monsters Ball or Losing Isaiah or whatever. And like, I'm tired of people giving her shit too. I'm like, y'all need to get over Catwoman because y'all got over Jiggly and y'all got over all these other crappy movies that all these white people did. And like, every single white person has at least 4 or 5 crappy movies. Okay, Halle Berry has a couple too. What y'all expect? Like,
that's freedom. That's freedom to make crappy movies or make whatever you want to make. And then to go back to your show Banshee, when I was looking at it, you have like, I just saw so much freedom. Your freedom to create. And I just thought that was just beautiful to me. Like you mentioning all of these characters or all of these directors that influence or that you admired, I can see, or do they have a piece of you when you create Banshee?
Ooh. Asking all the good questions. Yeah, I feel like it's great that you brought up like the freedom with the film because I don't know if you guys saw the film or if you saw the monologue series. I don't know which one.
I saw the monologue series.
Yeah, I saw the monologue.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Y'all have the film though. I sent it to you guys, right?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay. Because it has a password. Then she won. But yeah, so y'all should watch the movie too. But
no,
yeah. So with because with both, and honestly, like that's been the hard part of like creating, right? It's like there's so many people who like believe in my work in a way that like I'm so grateful for. And because of that, they're willing to, whether it's volunteering or whether it's lower pay than they would get on a TV show, they're willing to do it because they know that it's going to help elevate me to the next level. The hope and the dream is that I'm able to keep that control as you get higher, because a lot of people will try to take that control from you. And there is a freedom of doing it yourself or doing it with the people you're collaborating with. Because even with the monologues, like the first monologue is Alexis. She plays Evie. That's the one in the kitchen, and when she's talking about how she got these powers to see dead people or whatever. And when I wrote that piece, there was like a paragraph that didn't fit where it was. So we wanted to move it like earlier in the piece. And that was something that Alexis brought to my attention. So like, I wrote this, but this is a collaborative process. And if this doesn't feel well to you, you can move it. And it actually made more sense when we read it out loud with where she wanted to maneuver that chunk of text, right? And so there's a freedom in like creating, and then there's a freedom in collaboration, and there's a safe space that isn't always created on big budget sets. And you know, I've just been trying to like hold on to that for as long as possible. And you know, I watch a lot of stuff. I do, and all of that. Just, I was looking at, actually, this is this thing called 24-hour plays that I was looking at, and they were doing like monologues on their Instagram story. And I was talking to another artist about another artist who was doing monologues in the vein of like the show he was trying to do was totally different than what I was doing. And he ended up getting a development deal the way that he was doing it. And I wanted to like create a space where people could see these characters in this world and this story without seeing the TV show yet. And I wanted to do it kind of on my terms. And I used the influence of these other kind of creative things that I was seeing come my way that I really enjoyed, and kind of took from that what I thought would work for what I was trying to do. So yeah, I mean, yeah, to answer that question, I take from, I don't steal, but I use that influence of other people and what they've done that works for them. And I say, how can this work for the story I'm trying to tell, right? And or what piece of this mostly can work for what I am trying to tell. So yeah, I mean, I use other artists all the time for that, and I also, you know, use real life shit. I remember when I was writing these pieces, I was like, wow, this feels way too close to our reality in a way that I was not expecting, especially Dino's monologue. His is like second to last. That's the one with the really beautiful man who's like rolling a blunt. And he's just talking about how things were different then and now, and how they ain't really that different. And it was just so interesting, like just watching that piece and like listening. And his performance is also really great, but like, and being like, oh man, this is like very relevant in a way that almost kind of can make you uncomfortable, because you're obviously, we're storytellers and we're pulling from real life. But when you're doing mythos and sci-fi, you're also kind of pulling from an alternate. It's pulling from reality, but also creating like this alternate reality, right? And so you don't realize sometimes in creating an alternate reality that can easily become your actual reality. But you think it's so far off, but it's not, you know? And that's scary. It's scary how many, me and my friends talk about like, which dystopian novel are we living in today? Like there's so many options.
It's crazy.
I know.
You don't know what's fact and what's fiction. I don't understand.
Right. And these novels and these shows are created to kind of warn us, right? And they're also being used as metaphors for our actual reality. Like this maybe if you saw this outside metaphor and how things were set up in this fictional world, maybe you can use this to see how it doesn't work in our actual world, or how it does work in our actual world, or how we can kind of use this as a mirror for what's going on now and how we can fix certain things. But that would mean that we lived in a world where like people cared. We have so many like leaders who don't, you know. So many people
even get me on that.
So and so it's weird that sci-fi kind of existed as this, like, you think of something like 1984 and this exists as this kind of like warning of like, beware of Big Brother, like this is what can happen if this happens, or if we stop allowing people to read, or stop allowing people to eat, or whatever, you know. Different dystopian novels have different themes, and, you know, this is what our world will become if we do this, or, you know. But
some of you things sound weird because you're talking about, you know, sci-fi and the technology. My mind goes straight to aliens. Like, what if aliens, because I'm obsessed with the History Channel and they talk about aliens. What if the aliens come down here just to warn us? Okay.
I mean, that's what Arrival